So week 10 of the NFL season not only brought some wild upsets, there were a couple of crazy ones, but it also featured overtime from two teams you never want to see get an extra quarter, a couple of thrilling endings, a coach getting fired, and more. So let's talk about it right after. First up, the people of Germany had to suffer through watching Daniel Jones and Bryce Young play football on Sunday morning. So I do sincerely apologize for that. They even drug it out into overtime to make everyone really suffer. It was pretty bad, but, it is what it is. Tyrone Tracy, who otherwise had a great game, fumbled on the first play of overtime, and the Panthers kicked the game-winning field goal just a few plays later. Daniel Jones was in peak form, throwing for 190 yards and 2 interceptions, while Bryce Young just had 126 yards, but he did throw a touchdown in the first quarter, so there is that. The Panthers won mainly on the back of Chuba Hubbard, the man who just signed a new extension with the team last week. He rushed for a career-high 153 yards on 28 carries and punched in a touchdown late in the third quarter. There was an injury scare with Hubbard, though, as he appeared to have banged up his knee, left for a bit, then thankfully, for Panthers fans, did return. Well, it turns out the lunatic dislocated his knee. Hubbard said it's happened a few times where his knee dislocates a little bit, but they were able to get it back, and he finished out the game, which is unreal. And with that overtime victory, the Panthers have won back-to-back games for the first time since 2022. Both of these W's have happened with Bryce Young at the helm, which I'm honestly happy for Bryce about. Meanwhile, the Giants are now 2-8 with Brian Daboll being very high on the list of coaches that are most likely to get fired this season. He was asked yesterday if Daniel Jones is still the starting quarterback moving forward, and he didn't say yes or no, but said they are evaluating things. Well, I'm going to read between the tea leaves here and say that Daniel Jones is cooked. It's Drew Lock season now, maybe. I don't know. But it's not going well over there for either team in New York, at least with the Jets and the Giants. I'll touch on the Jets later, but speaking of coaches getting fired, the Bears fired offensive coordinator Shane Waldron this morning after another lackluster performance from the offense on Sunday. Thomas Brown, the offensive passing game coordinator, has been promoted to be the new OC to replace Waldron, so we'll see if that coaching shakeup makes any difference. It has to, because it can't get much worse. The Bears haven't scored a touchdown in 23 straight drives, and that's not a typo. Even with Waldron being canned, I still think Matt Eberflus, the head coach, could be on the hot seat, and if things don't turn around here before the end of the season for Chicago, I would not be surprised if he finds himself on the way out. He did buy himself a little bit of time here, making a change at the OC position, considering Eberflus is technically a defensive-minded head coach. Change was definitely needed after they got trounced by the Patriots on Sunday by a score of 19-3, with Caleb Williams getting sacked 9 times. Yes, the same amount of times that 50 Cent got shot. They're now giving up over 4 sacks per game, which is the second most, only behind Cleveland. Chicago's offense was abysmal. Aside from giving up the 9 sacks, they had just 142 yards of offense and were 1 for 14 on third downs. It's hard to blame Caleb for the piss-poor performance when he was facing pressure all game long, but yeah, 16 of 30 for just 120 yards is not going to get it done. At one point, it looked like the Bears were going to be a legit playoff team. They were 4-2 for crying out loud just a few weeks ago, but have since dropped 3 straight and are now firmly at the bottom of one of the most competitive divisions in the NFC North. Speaking of the NFC North and subpar quarterback performances, the Vikings played the Jags in what was probably the grossest game of the entire weekend. You can debate it out with the game that happened in Germany, but this one was not great. Trevor Lawrence was out with a shoulder injury, so Mac Jones was the man under center for Jacksonville. I'm honestly not sure who played worse in this game, though, between him and Sam Darnold. Mac Jones threw for just 111 yards and 2 interceptions, with the INTs coming on the last 2 drives of the game when they actually had a chance to go and win it. And shout out to Cam Bynum, who after the game-sealing interception hit what might have been the Celly of the year so far. He mimicked that viral Olympic breakdance routine. It was freaking hilarious. Nailed it. 10 out of 10 with a gold medal in my book. Anyway, Darnold didn't do much better than Mac Jones, if I'm going to be honest. He moved the ball and led some drives, but he threw not 1, not 2, but 3 interceptions inside the Jags' 30-yard line, all while targeting Justin Jefferson. Somehow, the Vikings still won, thanks to their defense, and John Parker Romo hitting 4 field goals to give them their only points of the game. And this was actually his first time ever playing in an NFL game. John Parker Romo, if you're wondering who the hell that is. The Vikings just signed him last week following both their starting kicker and long snapper needing to be placed on IR. And check this out. Since 2010, teams that had 0 touchdowns and at least 3 turnovers were 0 in 147. Well, the Vikings became the first team to get a win under those circumstances since the Packers did it against the Vikings in 2006. Next up, the Saints pulled off the upset of the week as they took down the Falcons on Sunday. New Orleans had lost 7 games in a row after winning their first 2. So basically everybody wrote them off, especially considering they just lost to the Panthers and ended up firing head coach Dennis Allen after that game. Well, the interim coach theory strikes again. New Orleans named Darren Rizzi the special teams coordinator, the interim head coach for the remainder of the year, and the team rallied behind him on Sunday and got the dub in his first game. The Saints had no business winning, let's be honest here, but give credit to Coach Rizzi and Derek Carr. They were 4.5-point underdogs at home playing against the 6-3 Falcons, who are number 1 in the NFC South. The Falcons had 100 more yards than them and won the time of possession, but that mattered not as Derek Carr connected with the ghost of Marquez Valdez-Scantling for 2 touchdowns. First, he caught this 40-yarder with 3 defenders in the area, a perfect ball here from Carr. Then on their very next possession, Carr launched this one to him for a 67-yard gain that got them down inside the 5. Then on 3rd and goal, he found him over the middle for his second score of the day, and with the game on the line. 4th and 4, the Falcons had no timeouts with the clock ticking down. They needed a field goal to tie it. So what do? Throw it short of the sticks, not able to get out of bounds. And that drained the entire clock, which is indeed unfortunate as the Falcons now fall to 6-4, and the Saints are now 3-7. I will say I'm happy for MVS. That is a pretty impressive game, all things considered. And then Christian McCaffrey made his long-awaited season debut against the Bucs on Sunday. He wasn't the most efficient on the ground, rushing for just 39 yards on 13 carries, but he was very effective in the pass game, catching 6 passes for 1 shy of some very nice yards. It was 68 yards. Brock Purdy was lights out. He threw for 353 yards and 2 touchdowns, with one of them going to George Kittle, great freaking grab, and the other going to Ricky Pearsall on this impressive 46-yard catch and run for the first touchdown of the rookie's career. It was also one hell of a day for Jake Moody, who missed 3 field goal attempts. Yeah, 3 of them. And Deebo Samuel was pretty pissed off about that. He appeared to confront him on the sideline and then kind of shoved the long snapper Taybor Pepper by the neck. It all worked out in the end, though, because Moody got a chance at the game-winning field goal from 44 yards out, and he came through when it mattered most, giving the Niners the win 23-20. But that is definitely a bad look there for Deebo Samuel. Meanwhile, Tampa is heading into their bye week at 4-6 after losing 4 straight games, but they play the Giants, Panthers, and Raiders in the next 3 games following the bye. So if there's ever a chance or a time to turn it around, that 3-game stretch is going to be it. Meanwhile, the Niners, they move to 5-4 as they try and make a push for the division in the crowded NFC West. One of the teams they'll have to get through is the Arizona Cardinals, who are cooking right now. They're now on a 4-game win streak after beating the brakes off the Jets 31-6. Kyler Murray has been on fire, and he played another excellent game on Sunday, throwing for 266 yards and a touchdown with just 2 incompletions on the day. And somehow, he was just fine after getting freaking popped from his blind side with his helmet flying 50 yards into the stands. Anyway, they're still the top dog in the division at 6-4, but they still have 4 divisional games left on their schedule, so things should be very entertaining here down the stretch. As for the Jets, I mean, their season is basically over. I thought maybe they could make some kind of a run after they snapped their 5-game losing streak with a win over the Texans last week. But this is bad. They're now 3-7 and are 26th in both scoring and yards on offense. And that's after getting Devontae Adams. And you have all these playmakers over there, including, in theory, Aaron Rodgers himself. And at this point, I think they would be lucky to finish with 6 wins on the season. But hey, look at the bright side, Jets fans. At least you'll get a high draft pick. Another team whose season is likely over is the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott is set to miss the remainder of the season with a hamstring injury. We knew that, but it was confirmed today that he's going to need to undergo season-ending surgery, and that's going to take place tomorrow. So, tough loss for the Cowboys, and I'm definitely wishing him well in his recovery. But Cooper Rush is not that guy, at least not right now. This man somehow completed 13 passes, yet had just 45 yards. That is honestly pretty impressive. Things got so bad that they actually brought in Trey Lance for the entirety of the fourth quarter. He didn't do much better, though. He sailed this ball that was picked off by C.J. Gardner-Johnson. But who cares? The game was way over by that point in time. The Eagles absolutely dominated Dallas, sending them to 3-6 on the year, while they themselves moved to 7-2, winning 5 games in a row. They actually took control of the top spot in the NFC East after the Steelers took care of the Washington Commanders. That's right, this game, Steelers-Commanders, definitely lived up to the hype as it went down to the wire via a wild finish. With a little over 2 minutes left in the game and the Steelers down by 6, Russell Wilson was facing pressure and floated this one to Mike Williams for the 32-yard touchdown to give them the lead 28-27. Mike Williams was making his Steelers debut after the Jets traded him before the deadline, and that was his only catch of the freaking game. But man, was it a big one. Big pause. Big one, big one, big one. They also traded for Preston Smith, and he had a huge impact in this game as well, with 1 sack and 2 tackles for loss. But back to the end of this game, the Commanders were facing 4th and 9, and Jaden Daniels rifled this pass to Zach Ertz, who caught it right at the line to gain, but after review, they determined he was short of the first, so the Steelers got the ball back. Pittsburgh needed just 1 first down to ice the game, and this run by Cordarrelle Patterson made it 4th and 1, and that's when the rookie Johnny Newton had a big ol' brain fart. Russ hit him with the hard count, and he jumped off sides, giving the Steelers a first down in the win. Pittsburgh is looking like a serious contender at the moment with a 7-2 record and a lead over the Ravens of all teams in the AFC North. I don't know who would have picked the Steelers to be leading that division, but that is exactly what's happening right now. It was a somewhat controversial decision made weeks ago to bench Justin Fields for Russell Wilson, but it is definitely looking like the right move. And check this out. Russell Wilson is just 2 touchdowns away from having the most touchdowns in a season since Big Ben retired after the 2021 season, and Russ has only played in 3 games. That's more of a testament to how bad their quarterback play has been over the last few years. But still, Russ is cooking right now, not even using that microwave no more, and there's no denying it. He actually has the longest active streak for consecutive games with a touchdown pass, as he's thrown for at least 1 in the last 22 games. The Bills are one of the other true contenders in the AFC, though, believe it or not. They still haven't beat a team with a winning record, but of course, we're going to find out what happens when they take on the Chiefs this Sunday. As far as their most recent matchup against the Colts goes, let's talk about it. Joe Flacco had a heck of a time against their defense on Sunday. His first pass attempt, for example, was a pick 6 to Taron Johnson. Then on the very next possession, he was trying to throw a screen to Jonathan Taylor, but big Austin Johnson picked him off. He started to bounce back a bit and did throw for 272 yards and a couple touchdowns on the day, but he was strip sacked in the third quarter and threw another INT in the fourth. It wasn't Josh Allen's prettiest day either. Coming into the game, he had thrown just 2 picks all season, which was pretty wild considering how many picks this man has thrown in his career, but he threw 1 in the second quarter and 1 in the third quarter against Indianapolis, both on the first play of those drives. He had a solid day using his legs, though, as he rushed for 50 yards and a touchdown, and that combined with a James Cook touchdown and 3 Tyler Bass field goals was enough to give them the win over Indy, 30-20. They now have the second best record in the AFC at 8-2, and we should be in a good one next week as they take on the Chiefs, as I just mentioned, who are still undefeated after an insane win against the Denver Broncos. I covered this game in much greater detail on my other channel, so check that out if you haven't already. It's 24 minutes. Yeah, pretty detailed, but basically this was a defensive slugfest that was actually a pretty clean game for the most part, as neither team had any turnovers. KC took a 16-14 lead with around 6 minutes left in the game after a Harrison Butker field goal, his third of the day after the Chiefs went just like 1 of 4 in the red zone. They could not score a touchdown to save their lives. Meanwhile, the Broncos didn't score a touchdown after the second quarter. Second half, scoreless. The Broncos did manage to put together a 13-play drive on this last drive of the game, draining the entire clock, calling a timeout with 1 second remaining that set up a Will Lutz 35-yard field goal attempt. This is a chip shot to win the game that almost always goes in. However, Leo Chanel came barreling through the line and blocked the kick as time expired, sending the Chiefs to 9-0 on the season. That was absolutely electric, and they've now won 15 games in a row and are off to just their third 9-0 start to a season in franchise history. Now, before I get to Sunday Night Football, let's hone in on another team from the AFC West in the Chargers. They handled the Titans 27-17 in a game that really wasn't as close as the final score indicated, but the Titans scored a garbage time touchdown to make it appear a little more respectable. The Chargers pounded the piss out of the rock. They rushed 39 times for 145 yards and 2 touchdowns, though 9 of those rush attempts were from Justin Herbert, which were mostly on pass plays that he took off running on. And on one of those plays, he snatched the sole and ankles from Kenneth Murray, making him touch grass as he juked him into next Tuesday. He wasn't asked to do that much with his arm, only throwing 18 times, but he didn't really need to. Jim Harbaugh has done wonders for this Chargers team. Let's be honest. They're allowing the fewest points per game in the NFL and have a legit running game behind J.K. Dobbins and that offensive line. Justin Herbert isn't asked to carry the team on his back like he has in years past, and he's been very effective as a game manager. Since week 7, he's the highest graded quarterback according to PFF and hasn't committed a single turnover since week 2. The Chargers are sitting at 6-3 on the year. And while the division is probably out of reach with KC being the buzzsaw they are, they could do some serious damage in the playoffs as a wildcard team. Next up, the Lions traveled to Houston to take on the Texans in primetime for Sunday Night Football. And this game was freaking insane, and not for the reasons really anybody expected. The Lions came into the game with the #1 scoring offense, putting up 32 points per game on average to go along with the 5th ranked scoring defense. Jared Goff had the highest completion percentage in the NFL and had only thrown 4 picks all season. So, just as everyone expected, he proceeded to throw 5 picks in this game, and the Lions were down 23-7 at halftime. It was freaking unbelievable. Thankfully for the Lions, their defense came to play in the second half, and they forced C.J. Stroud to throw 2 picks as they completely shut out Houston's offense in the second half. Jared Goff connected with Amon-Ra St. Brown early in the fourth to make it a 3-point game. Then a 58-yard field goal from Jake Bates tied things up with 5 minutes remaining. Kaimi Fairbairn thought a 58-yard field goal looked fun, so he lined up for his own try to take the lead, but he missed it by a country mile. I think at this point, everyone and their mother knew the Lions were about to win this game. Goff again connected with St. Brown to convert on a crucial 3rd and 6. Then after a few rush attempts to drain the clock, they trotted out Jake Bates for the 52-yard try. It looked like it was sailing left on him, but it snuck back inside and just went in without doinking the upright, giving Detroit the comeback win 26-23. The Lions just seem inevitable. Even in a game where it looks like everything is going wrong, they still pull it together in the second half and find a way to win one very ugly football game. The offense is legit, and even when they're not playing well, the defense is also legit. Get this. They've recorded at least 1 interception and have not given up more than 1 touchdown in every single game this season. They're just the 6th team in NFL history to accomplish that through 9 games, with the last team being the Eagles back in 1985. And with this insane win over the Texans, they are the first team since 1970 to throw 5 or more picks and trail by 15 or more points and still win. It feels like we're destined for a Chiefs and Lions Super Bowl, but obviously a lot can happen between now and then, so we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. As for right now, they're just focused on winning the division as they've got the 7-2 Vikings right on their heel, though it appears Sam Darnold's armor is starting to crack. The Texans dropped to 6-4, but luckily for them, every team in the AFC South lost on Sunday, and the only team they really have to worry about at this point is the Colts, who are 4-6. Nico Collins was activated to the 53-man roster before the game, but did not play on Sunday, though I would expect him to be back next week when they take on the Cowboys, and the Texans offense could really use the help. And finally, the red-hot Rams hosted the Dolphins on Monday Night Football, with LA coming off of 3 straight wins and Miami looking to get back on track after 3 straight losses. I'm going to be honest, I thought the Rams were going to roll in this one. They finally got Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and most of their offensive line back and healthy, but they could not for the life of them, because of the O-line mainly, get in the end zone. They had to settle for 6 field goals on the night, making 5 of them. They were 0 for 3 in the red zone, and that was really what did them in, as Miami was 2 for 3 in the red zone. Stafford was 32 of 46 for 293 yards and this interception that came on a tipped pass late in the first quarter. Puka and Cooper Kupp did have solid games. They combined for 16 catches and over 170 yards, but the lack of execution in the red zone, that Stafford pick, and a Kyren Williams fumble were too much to overcome, plus the biggest issue of the night that I cannot overlook, that is going to be the Rams O-line. I thought they would be great, or at least look much better than they were, with so many pieces of the O-line returning. Instead, they gave up 21 pressures, 15 hurries, and allowed Stafford to get sacked 4 times. That obviously really helped the Dolphins' offense out, because Tua didn't exactly light the world on fire. He was 20 of 28 for just over 200 yards, but they got out to an early 10-0 lead and never looked back. Tyreek Hill got wide open for this touchdown on a well-designed play at the goal line, and that was actually his first touchdown since week 1, believe it or not. The Dolphins went on to win 23-15 as they moved to 3-6 on the year. They have a puncher's chance at making the playoffs with the Colts and Bengals ahead of them at 4-6. Then the Broncos currently occupying the final wildcard spot at 5-5. It is highly unlikely Miami makes it though, but we've seen crazier things happen. And despite the loss, the Rams are still in the mix in the NFC West. The Cardinals are in the lead at 6-4, then the Niners are at 5-4, then the Rams and Seahawks are both sitting at 4-5, and they've still got games against all 3 division opponents left on their schedule, so it's very possible for them to make a run down the stretch. So that is some of the wildest moments and outcomes. Week 10 of the NFL season was a wild one. You got to let me know your thoughts on that and some of these crazy standout stats and how you think it is looking, talking about the playoff picture in both the AFC and the NFC. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.